In contrast to much freewheeling YouTube content, I write everything that I say on camera, just as I have written this speech. Indeed, writing has been the constant across my very weird career. Writing has, I believe, been the proverbial secret sauce of my YouTube channel about literal secret sauces. I'm now going to talk about 3 lessons that I learned from news writing that I have applied to my new career. Some of these lessons might be directly applicable to your work as a writer, but even if they're not, I hope that they can give you some ideas about how you might apply skills from one chapter of your life to another chapter. For I believe in the awesome power of cross-pollination. I was never going to be the best journalist or the best teacher. I was certainly never going to be the best cook, or even more unlikely, the best filmmaker. I was a radio guy before I started doing these things. In contrast, I am perhaps the best journalist, teacher, cook, filmmaker working on YouTube today, which is a much lower bar to meet because I am the only guy holding it up. The bar is necessarily exactly as high as I can reach. In niches, there are riches, the business school axiom goes, and over the last year or so, I have certainly found that to be the case. So, lesson number 1, the world thirsts for a tight lead. In journalism, the lead is just short of everything. The lead is the opening, the first sentence, sentences, or maybe even the first couple graphs of your story. Graph is short for paragraph because we don't have time for extraneous syllables in news. Indeed, insufficient time is the disease that a tight lead can treat, though never quite cure. Your lead is, in the best case, a quick, compelling advertisement for your story. It gets people in the door and convinces them to take off their coat and stay a while. They only have a few moments in their busy lives to spend reading the news every day, and your lead persuades them to spend those moments with you instead of with the next fella. In the worst case, a good tight lead provides the user with an immediate yet safe off-ramp. If they decide to spend their precious time with the next fella instead of you, they will at least know what is essential about your story because you put what is essential in the lead. In most cases, this will be the who, what, when, where, why, and how, or as many of those as you can fit in. That would be what we might call a newsy lead. Let's just look at a random example from the Associated Press that I found today. Again, just a random AP article that I pulled up from today that has a newsy lead, and let's go ahead and read it. As businesses reopened Friday in more of the U.S., an overwhelming majority of states still fall short of the COVID-19 testing levels that public health experts say are necessary to safely ease lockdowns and avoid another deadly wave of outbreaks, according to an Associated Press analysis. And by the way, if you've only ever written for the page, right there is an object lesson in how writing for the voice is a very different thing from writing for the page. Sentences have to be much, much shorter to work out of the voice. But anyway, otherwise, this is a perfectly lovely lead for a print article. Let's go ahead and break that down a little bit. The who's the who? It's U.S. states, right? The what is that they're falling short on COVID testing. The when is Friday, etc., etc. Most news stories that you have ever read in your life start with a newsy lead like that. And those that didn't probably started with another kind of lead that has a few names. Sometimes it's called an anecdotal lead or a feature style lead or a soft lead. Again, let me show you a random example that I just grabbed from the AP today. Counterfeit masks reaching frontline health workers in the U.S. Show you the first few paragraphs there. Let's read the first one. On a day when COVID-19 cases soared, healthcare supplies were scarce, and an anguished doctor warned he was being sent to war without bullets, a cargo plane landed at the Los Angeles International Airport, supposedly loaded with the ammo doctors and nurses were begging for, some of the first N95 medical masks to reach the U.S. in almost 6 weeks. That is the first paragraph, but it is not a newsy lead because this news article is not about that one doctor or that one plane in Los Angeles. That is merely an anecdote. It's an example of what this story is going to be about. We aren't told what this story is about until the third paragraph, which you can see on the bottom there. An Associated Press investigation has found those masks were counterfeits, as are millions of medical masks, gloves, gowns, and other supplies being used in hospitals across the country, putting lives at risk. That paragraph is what's called the nut graph. It is what has the who, what, when, where, why, etc. A feature style article, which is what that was, makes you wait a couple of paragraphs before it tells you the news, but it makes up for that delay by giving you something really scintillating right at the top instead, a tiny little story, an anecdote. It's analogous to what you might call a cold open in a TV show or a movie, or maybe even they call them that in novels, where you're dropped straight into the action without any explanation, and then the narrative gradually fills in the blanks as we proceed. This is a slightly less immediate form of news writing, but it still starts with a bang. It grabs the audience's attention straight out of the gate, and that is essential. Thus concludes the introductory news writing lecture that I have given to freshman journalism students about 24 times. Now, how does this apply to making food videos on YouTube? Well, let me show you my second quote-unquote hit video. Yes, I broil my chocolate chip cookies. It's weird, but it works. I'll show you. The dough is just a variation of the old familiar recipe. 2 sticks of salted butter, not softened, but melted all the way down. All right. I could have been a lot more specific in that opening. I could have said, if you start your cookies under the broiler for the first minute, a brown skin will form on the dough that then spreads and cracks in very attractive patterns as you finish the cookies on the normal bake setting. That would have been something closer to a newsy lead applied to a recipe video. But I also want to keep people watching. That's how I make money. So I don't want to give them all the milk for free lest they think they needn't buy the cow. The other way in which this video embodies the spirit of the newsy lead is that it gets right into the content that people clicked for. There is no opening theme song. There's no, hey, here's my fancy motion graphic that I use to brand my channel. There is no BS opening ramble like you see from so many YouTubers. Hey, what's good, YouTube? It's your boy Adam back with another one. Don't forget to smash those like and subscribe buttons. So AdamFan69 requested that I do a video about my chocolate chip cookie recipe, and I was thinking, yeah, that'd be a really good video. So let's get into it. I broil my chocolate chip cookies. All of that lead up is unnecessary. Whatever you're going to say after the so let's get into it, that's the part you should start with. Delete everything up to that point. The present content marketplace is orders of magnitude more competitive now than it was at any other time in history. People are making a decision in the first 2 or 3 seconds of your thing about whether they're going to keep watching or listening or reading, or if they're going to just swipe on to the next thing. It is tremendously advantageous to dive into the deep end on your first sentence in this content marketplace. And I was rewarded for doing so with that cookie video. Let me show you something. So somebody posted that video to the very popular subreddit r/videos, and here is how they headlined it. Rare. This cooking video instantaneously gets to the point. This Reddit post gave me the biggest one-day spike in subscribers that I have seen to this day. The world thirsts for a tight lead. Let me show you some more examples. You can see some more literal deployments of news writing type leads on my Monday videos, which again are videos that I do that are about food, but they're not recipes. They are literally journalism most of the time. Therefore, I try to write a lead like I would for any other article. So here's a video from September that I did about the health and safety issues of cooking with non-stick pans. Some of the chemicals inside this non-stick pan could be hazardous to human health. Also, the chemicals used to make it back at the factory. However, that doesn't necessarily mean this is dangerous to cook with. In fact, the weight of scientific evidence and expert opinion is on the side of this being quite safe to cook with, as long as you don't get it way too hot. And even if you did that, it probably wouldn't be a very big deal, unless you already have a cardiorespiratory disease or if you are a bird. But it's not all good news. Bad chemicals used in the production process of pans like these are everywhere in our environment. They're probably in your body right now, whether you cook with one of these or not. Details? Field trip to the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences in Durham, North Carolina. That clip that I played for you, if people had stopped watching at the point at which I stopped playing it to you, they would basically know what they need to know. I can't fit in all the details. If I could, there'd be no reason for the rest of the video to exist, but that's the big picture. If I didn't have my news writing background, I probably would have written an intro a little bit something like this. This is a kind of intro I think most people would write. Everybody is always asking me about the Teflon pans in my cooking videos. They think Teflon is going to give you cancer. They think if you get the pans too hot, the Teflon is going to vaporize and kill you through your lungs. Well, today, let's dive into that. Let's find out how safe Teflon pans really are. I went to the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences to talk to toxicologist Dr. Mamie Huang. That's the kind of thing a normal human would probably write to intro that video. And it's not terrible on its face, but if someone had stopped watching at that point, they would have no information. I would have told them nothing valuable. Or worse, I would have reinforced some unfounded fears in their mind. Teflon pans are not as dangerous as people think they are, says science. The factories that make them pose some very serious environmental health hazards, but not the pans themselves. That's what the available science says, and I felt that I should say that right at the top, so that I will be serving even those users who jump off the train 20 or 30 seconds into the ride. I try to have faith that if I respect my audience's time and intelligence, they will reward me by sticking with me and watching the rest of the video. Thus far, enough of them have done just that to provide me with a pretty great living. Nonetheless, anyone making content online in the 21st century constantly has to balance two competing interests: informing people versus getting their attention. This is the second lesson that I've applied from my news writing to my YouTube career. You cannot inform anyone unless you get them to click on your thing and keep them reading or watching. However, in order to get them to click, you often need to do things that come at the expense of informing them. The classic example is a concept from content marketing known as the curiosity gap. That is the gap between what people know and what they would like to know. Example: you won't believe where this guy puts his cookie dough. That would be an example of a classic curiosity gap type headline. They're all over the internet because they work. They get people to click. I've always been a firm believer that if you know the answer to a question that a lot of people have, you should give them the answer right away. Make the answer the headline. An example of that would be a recent video that I did about food safety amid the COVID-19 pandemic. And let me show you this to you. And here is the headline: people are more dangerous than food, in parentheses, COVID-19 food safety tips. You always got to put the keywords in the headline for the YouTube search algorithm to find you. But the takeaway is people are more dangerous than food. People are wondering right now if they can get this virus from food or from food packaging. I could have easily titled this video, "Can you get the coronavirus from food?" Question mark. But I felt that this is not the time for curiosity gap headlines. So I tried to sum up what I know in one tiny fragment of a sentence. And the best I could do is people are more dangerous than food. I'll go ahead and play you the first few seconds of this clip. Amid the COVID-19 pandemic, people are most likely far more dangerous than food. Whatever food you can get via the least amount of human contact, that most likely is going to be the safest food right now. People are more dangerous than food. Eating out of your pantry and garden would be best, but for most of us who aren't doomsday preppers, that's not a viable long-term meal plan. So in this video, we're going to talk about getting food from a grocery store and getting takeout or delivery food from a restaurant. So that's what I did for that particular video, because I felt that this is not the appropriate moment for clickbait techniques. However, you will notice that this month-old video about COVID-19 food safety only has about 200,000 views. Now, that's great, but it's not a lot for me. In contrast, let me show you some videos where instead of giving people the answer in the headline, I merely posed the question in the headline. So here's one. Is olive oil safe at high heat? Does it taste bad? Question, not the answer in the headline. And that's right now at 328,000 views. And that's a more recent video than the COVID one. The best cheese for pizza. I easily could have headlined that with the name of the cheese, but I left it out because I wanted to leave a curiosity gap. They have to watch to find out what the best cheese for pizza is. And that's at 698,000 views, right? Does marinating do anything? 868,000 views. Okay. That's what you get when you leave a little bit of curiosity gap. People are far more likely to click if your headline poses the question rather than offering the answer. Now, I don't feel good about doing that, but I can't inform anyone if I don't get their attention first, and I certainly can't make a living if I don't get them to click. Indeed, maybe it would have helped people to stay safe in the midst of this pandemic if I had titled the COVID-19 video something like, "Can you get COVID from food?" Question mark. Maybe clickbait actually would have been in the public interest because it would have gotten more people to pay attention and to listen to the experts whom I interviewed in that video. I have reconciled myself to using certain clickbaity techniques. However, when I hit people with a curiosity gap headline, I try to make up for it by giving them the answer in the very first sentence of the video. So let's go back to, does marinating do anything? Okay. Does marinating do anything? Clickbaity question, headline. I make up for that to my user by answering the question right in the very beginning. Here's the very beginning of this video.
Yes, marinating absolutely does do something, and it absolutely does have a purpose in the kitchen. It's all the rage right now for people to say otherwise, because brines have supplanted marinades as the hip thing that all the cool kids are soaking their meats in.
Now, the third and final lesson that I'm going to talk about is a little bit different. It has more to do with the body of the writing rather than the lead or the headline. In a prior life, I had writing media criticism for the public broadcasting trade paper, Current. I had a little slogan. It was a tagline that sums up my views on how journalism is different now from what it was before. And here it is. Authenticity is the new authority. Authenticity is the new authority. This is hardly a novel observation on my part. The internet has empowered people to scrutinize journalism to an extent that simply wasn't possible for most people in the prior media epoch. Simply performing authority by using a serious tone and wearing a fancy suit and presuming an air of omniscience and impartiality in your writing does not engender trust anymore. Quite the opposite, in fact. Audiences today see right through that artifice. The alternative to the old-style newsreader voice of God is authenticity. Just be yourself. You say to your audience, hey, I'm just like you. I don't have all the answers. I have ideological and viewpoint biases, just like you do. The only difference is, while you were working your job today, my job was to look into this news story, find out what I can, and relay that to you as honestly as possible. And I'm not going to try to hide my biases from you. I'm going to wear them on my sleeve so that you can take them into account and put whatever I am telling you into that context. That is authenticity as a replacement for the outmoded authority model. And I have found it to be very useful in writing cooking videos, recipe videos in particular, after all. I have no authority when it comes to cooking. I am not a trained chef. I have never worked in a restaurant. All I am is a guy in his kitchen with a camera, which is literally how I have introduced myself in several videos. The only thing that makes me different from my viewers is that while they were doing their jobs all day, my job was to try out a recipe a few times and come up with something that works well for us normal home cooks just like you and me. That is the core premise and promise of the recipe content on my channel. And I try to embody that premise and promise in my writing. So let me show you an example. This recipe is my attempt to recreate the awesomely bad roast beef au jus that I've enjoyed so often at cheap weddings and office Christmas parties. It's the kind of roast that a white hat wearing guy on a buffet line slices super thin for you under a heat lamp. I freaking love that stuff, and the main reason it's inexpensive is because of the cut. If it's a cheap wedding, this is not going to be a rib roast. It's going to be from the round, or at least that's what we call it here in the South. Stop it there on that scintillating visual. So the first thing that you will notice in writing there is the liberal use of the first person. This recipe is my attempt. It's what I've enjoyed. I freaking love that stuff. That might strike some people as self-absorbed on my part. After all, most people don't really care what Adam Ragusa in Macon, Georgia likes to eat. They care what they like to eat. But I believe that I don't know what you like to eat. Professional chefs presume an air of authority in that regard. They talk as if they know what you like to eat. And indeed, they might have a better idea about that than I do, given their years of experience feeding the general public, but they're still just feigning authority. They don't really know what you like to eat. What I know is what I like to eat, and I know how I discovered what I like to eat, and I know how I figured out how to achieve what I like to eat in my home kitchen. Maybe you'll like your roast the way that I do, maybe you won't. But what I hope you can learn from my video is how you can go on the same journey of self-discovery that I took. Trying to avoid prescriptivist writing often creates certain sentence-level challenges when making how-to content. I don't want to say, now you should put in the flour. Now you should turn your stove to medium high. I don't want to presume that air of authority, in part because I've not earned it, and also because I think no one can earn it. Medium high is a different temperature on every oven. So what I try to say is, now I'm going to turn my stove on medium high. Now is when I'm going to put in my flour. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm merely telling you what I did. This unfortunately can trap me in some really repetitive sentence structures. I will do this. I will do that. The writing gets really plodding after a while, and all of the I's and me's really do start to make the copy sound self-absorbed on a surface level, at least. So sometimes I try for elliptical constructions where I simply omit the pronoun. I'll say, in goes the flour, oven to 350, out comes the roast. There's no subject in those sentences, or at least there's no human subject in those sentences. I'm the one putting in the flour and I'm the one turning on the oven, but you already know that, so I don't think that I need to say that every time. I'm leaving myself out of the sentence in order to make the writing more economical and less me, 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 me. However, this approach can create problems, as it did here in the last clip that I'm going to play for you. This is a recipe for a homemade ersatz demi-glace.
Do want to kind of squeeze that stuff because there's a lot of juice still stuck to it. Every drop is precious. Back on full blast this goes, and I want to reduce it down a bit until it can easily fit into my biggest bowl with room to spare. A little bit of stir every now and then just in case something might be burning on the bottom. I boiled that about a half hour. All right, back inside we go. Transfer this into my biggest bowl. If you filled that to the brim, it would hold 10 quarts.
So several smartasses watched that and then commented on that video, but wait. What if I don't have your biggest bowl? I only have my biggest bowl. How am I supposed to follow the instructions? And that's the kind of problem that you can get into when you start leaving out the subjects of sentences. I wish that I had a nice, elegant, summarizing conclusion to put at the end of this speech that I wrote for you, but another thing that I've learned from news writing is that once you've said all you have to say, just stop. Nobody cares about how good a writer you are. Nobody cares about your beautiful, elegant arc. They just want to learn what they can from your thing. And once you've given them all you got, you just stop. So I will now stop and invite any questions that you may have.